sweet. Complimentary. It's not supposed to be offensive towards the shorter people who are up here. My name is Jack, and I am an alcoholic. Congratulations to the token takers. Scott, it was good to see you take one, brother. Brennan and Skiff, was it? Thanks for being here, man. I was in that chair, too. My sobriety date is April 1st, 2014. Some of the people who I've asked to support me and keep me accountable here, they're the subtle group here in the middle. They've heard why that's my sobriety date. That sobriety date was given to me because I couldn't pick one for myself at the end of March in 2014. So an old timer had to designate April Fools as my sobriety date. And that's kind of like par for the course for the type of alcoholic that I am. You know, like I really don't know which way is up, even though I think I'm headed that direction. And I don't have to be drunk to do that. That's the weird part about it, is I could be completely bodily and mentally removed from alcohol, and I still have a really difficult time knowing which way I'm going. That seems to be the nature of the disease I have, which I identify as alcoholism. I think funny, I do weird things, and I have an odd perspective on how y'all should be behaving. And, you know, I like to identify with the fact that I have alcoholism because that's what is here with me today, right? I no longer am thinking about or obsessing over or tripping about where I'm going to get my next drink, where that relief of ease and comfort is going to come from which bottle and which brand, and, you know, whether it's light or dark. It really comes down to, do I want to be sane, happy, and free today? And that's why it's such an honor to be here and speak to you folks. And the fact that someone would even ask me to stand at a podium is a miracle in itself. So, you know, I guess there should be a couple of things that you might want to know about me to identify with the disease that I have. And it's interesting. I really like Chuck Chamberlain, and you know, when I read the book New Pair of Glasses, that really struck me. He was talking about how he was doing he was performing alcoholic behaviors long before a drop of alcohol entered his body, and I could really identify with that. I love putting people down to make myself feel better. You know, I really enjoyed that thoroughly, especially behind your back. I also really got something out of the thrill of getting away with a lie. You know, that was something that I learned at a very early age, and those of you who know me know that. Those of you who don't, I figured out this cool little math equation when I was about in kindergarten or first grade. I figured out that, you know, if I got in trouble, I was going to get my butt kicked by my parents. And if I told the truth about getting in trouble, I was certainly going to get my butt kicked. If I lied and got caught about getting in trouble, I was going to get my butt kicked a little worse. But if I lied and got away with it, I wasn't going to get my butt kicked. And that, you know, I'm a bad liar, man. You know, my grandma calls me a bull in a china shop, and so does my wife. And, you know, I don't get away with much. I never have. I'm not a sneaky, you know, stick to myself, ninja Black Widow alcoholic. God bless those of you who are out there who can get away with it. That's awesome. I respect your game. That is not me. There is chaos, confusion, and destruction wherever I have entered and left, and you know where I'm going. You know, you do not need like an Indian guide to track where Jack has been and what he has done. You really don't need that. It's pretty obvious. So, you know, I figured this out at a very young age, that, you know, I'm going to try and get that 10% of the time where I get away with something, right? And I chased that. That was the first thing I chased, was getting away with a lie. I chased that just like I ended up chasing alcohol later down the line. So that was my tool number one for living. 5, 6 years old, I'm walking around with a lie in my pocket. And now I know how to operate under that condition. The second tool for living that I had was that I was different and I was never going to ever fit in. And, I didn't understand what was wrong with me till much later down the line when I found out that I'm an alcoholic, right? The doctor's opinion perfectly describes what the heck is wrong with me, by the way. And I figured that out by going to playgrounds as a kid. And anyone who is, born before 1990 remembers that there were mall playgrounds, right? They had wooden playgrounds in the middle of malls before everyone got Sue happy. I don't know if you guys remember those. So my mother would go shopping. She would take me to a mall. I would play, while she went to Macy's or whatever. And I, see these other kids playing around, and I run up to them. And I'm this little dude. I was not like this. I was this tiny little kid, and I had a bowl cut. When I mean like a bowl cut, like my mother used a bowl to cut my hair, like not a request by the barber. And I had this little bowl cut, and I had blonde hair, right? And which I don't identify today with. And I'd go around to these kids, and I'd be like, hey, do you want to be my friend? Do you want to be my friend? Let's go play on the side. Let's go play ball. Do you want to be my friend? And they all said no. And I cannot remember a time where one of them said yes. There was a couple of kids who were silent, who let me kind of like shadow them for a little while. I was like someone's shadow at the playground for a little bit, and that was about it. So I knew that like I got this idea, right, that I was unwanted, right, that I didn't fit in. I didn't have like that click. I didn't, skateboarding was really big, and like skateboarding looked really dangerous and stupid, and I didn't want to do it. Like, why are you going to throw a board on a curb? So I didn't fit in there. I played basketball, and I was born in a city in Los Angeles in Arcadia where like I was like one of the only white kids. And so like I was used to that. And then when we moved, like it was way different. No one played basketball. These people were into surfing and lacrosse, and I did not understand that language. I didn't get that. And again, God bless anyone who plays lacrosse. It's not a knock. It's just my experience up here. So I'm a hooper, and I'm a small little white dude from East LA, and I'm trying to fit in with people, and it's really not working out very well for me. And so I always had this subtle thing, like I ended up making a few friends along the way, but I always had this subtle thing like I'm still disconnected, right? And that was reinforced when I was at home. That was reinforced that by this statement. You ever heard this one? You have so much potential. But if you just blank, you could reach it. Yeah, I never reached that potential in my household. Like an A- was failure. 20 points a game and 10 rebounds was failure because I'm not scoring 30 and grabbing 15. There were a lot of like standards that I grew up with, right? And that's not a product of my parents or like my childhood or something. My parents were doing the best job that they possibly could with the tools they had, right? And for normal people, that works a lot for normal human beings. If you're not an alcoholic like I am, you don't have this funny thinking and this obsession over drinking, and you can't stop once you start, and you always have this God-sized hole while you're walking around. If you're not someone like me and you're a normal people, man, you can live by the rules of potential and Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn and Earl Nightingale and all those guys your grandparents listened to on tapes about pulling yourself up from your bootstraps and what it means to be a woman and what it means to be a man and all these things. Like, you can operate like that. I would listen to those things. I would go out and I'd try and practice those principles in all my affairs, and I would utterly fail. 10 times out of 10. It was unquestionable. And so, those are my first 3 tools for living, right? Lying, I don't fit in, and I'm never going to reach whatever thing potential is called, right? So I'm a failure, I'm unwanted, and I can't tell you who I really am because I really don't know who I am. I'm lying so much I have no idea. Then something interesting happened. I took a drink. Then things got saucy. My first drop of alcohol was, I was a little kid. I didn't get drunk, right? I thought it was cool that my dad and my uncle were knocking back beers in the backyard. So I went to the recycle bin like, a smart human being would. And, I started tipping the backwash. And, after a couple days, these old recycle bins, they don't have them. They have full-size trash cans anymore. They were like this big. And if you left those out, like even overnight in LA with all the wonderful smog, you'd get ants, right? So I started getting, a viable source of protein at a very young age, along with some carbohydrates. Now I never got drunk. It was just I wanted what they had, right? I wanted what these normal drinkers in my family, these guys who I looked up to, I really wanted what they had, which is they looked like they were having a good time, and I had never experienced what a good time was. I had never experienced what a good time was. Isn't that a trip? And my old man worked his butt off to provide me with as much of a silver platter as you can whittle out from a working class family in Los Angeles during that time. We lived off of credit cards and had this tiny, tiny little house that we were renting. And my dad put in 16 hours a day, and he was a real estate broker. And then, boom, life changed. And he started making some real money. And he did everything he possibly could. But he wasn't around, right, because he had that trade-off. And that really boggled my mind when we all of a sudden got to spend that money and move out of LA, and I'm this out of sorts kid in Orange County. Yeah, no offense to anyone who's from Orange County. We'll talk after the meeting. How about that? And so I'm growing up with these tools. I have this experience growing up, and I'm in high school. And I had had some drops of alcohol out of a recycle bin in the hot LA summer, but I didn't feel any, there was nothing that happened for me. There was no spiritual experience. And then I'm in high school, and, everyone's had a friend named CJ, I'm sure. CJ was a gal on the softball team who's one of the fellas, right? And she could punch you in the face and you'd appreciate it. And she knew everybody, right? She knew every single soul at that school. And she's just like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, nothing. I'm doing, homework. I was a history nerd, so I was doing like AP European history homework or something like that. And she brings me over, and there's the two coolest dudes at school are sitting in this back patio. And I'll never forget. And they're not in this fellowship, so I can say their names. Garrett Thaxton and Kyle Bank, and they're state champ wrestlers at our high school, and they had been since they became freshmen. And these guys were just like the dudes, right? In my eyes, they were what it meant to be. That's what I wanted to be. And, they have a bottle of Jack and a bottle of Sky sitting there, and they're being very, British about it. They're taking one shot at a time with their pinky up, and they're smoking a Parliament cigarette and ashing it like a quarter of the way down. And, I thought it was very elegant that these giant, Neanderthal men were being so polite about their alcohol consumption. And so I'm like, hey, I want to be like you. Give me some of that. So they slide me a shot glass, and I'm so nervous and so self-centered, right? I'm extremely absorbed with myself and how I look in front of these dudes. And this is my shot, man. This is make or break Jack for any social agenda he'll ever have for the rest of his life. And I take this shot, and it's like I didn't get drunk, right? But I just felt that toes to the head thing, like that yo-yo. It was like an angel was doing like breakdancing in my body, you know. It was phenomenal. And I don't even know which one I took first, but I will tell you, I ended up never using the shot glass again, and I drank both the rest of those bottles. And I don't remember what happened that night. I woke up in my bed, and I was very grateful to be in my bed. I was like, oh, yes, this is so nice. And I sit up, and my mom and my dad are in a rocking chair sitting there. And I'm like, how's it going? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in my bed. I shoot up, and like I have this like stinging, gnarly pain. Well, that was because they had shoved a catheter up my manhood the night before because I had had alcohol poisoning. And that's how I drank. That's how I rocked. That's what I did. I was off and running. And the next day, I got a lot of positive reinforcement for the type of behavior I had. I was at school, and I went from a dude who was being folded in half by seniors and put in trash cans to this guy who was getting knucks left and right for being an animal, you know, for playing football naked in the middle of the street with traffic the night before. You're a wild man, dude. You're crazy. And that's all it took. That is all it took. And I made a deal with booze, and I was like, you are my solution for whatever I run into. Good, bad, bored, doesn't matter. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Now, I wanted to make some adjustments so I'd remember that experience. So I did. So what I did is I ended up drinking to improve my tolerance, which AKA I just got blacked out a lot until I stopped getting blacked out on the same amount of alcohol. That's how that happened. And that's about it, folks. I still was running around with those tools for living. I still was lying, cheating, manipulating, army crawling on my parents' bedroom at 2 o'clock at night to slip money out of my dad's wallet while he's snoring to go buy booze. And I thought it was under the guise of, I just like to party. You know, normal people who party, if you've ever met one, they're pretty interesting. People who like to party, they'll set a date and then forget about it and then maybe go grocery shopping for it a few days before, right? I learned about a party at a friend's house. I'm stealing and or procuring, probably not buying booze the night I hear about it, and then I drink it the night I hear about it, and then I'm hoping I have some left over for the party in the next 2 weeks. That's not normal. That is pre-planned alcoholism at its finest. And so I really want to get to the part where, I get sober, because I think I've more than qualified at this point. Like, I'm a knucklehead drunk. I'm not really, there's nothing special about me. I went through some stuff. My mom committed suicide when I was 17 years old, right? She was a sick woman. She had some things going on. She took her own life, right? I'll tell you what, I used that as a crutch to beat y'all over the head with for a decade about my drinking. That's what that was for me. That's the kind of warped mind I have, is like something terrible happens to someone else, and I am so self-centered that I will grab onto that incident and make it all about me. So guess what? If you made your mom a joke between the ages of 17 years old and 25, I'd have a great excuse to pummel you in the face and feel like a man about it. That's how my disease affects me, right? I am so scared. I'm so in fear of you finding out who I am that I can't ever tell you the truth. And the minute you find out a modicum of truth about me, you're a terrible human being. You're a lying, cheating, thieving bastard, and I hate you. I want you out of my life because you found out a little bit of truth about me. So I do this for a decade. I live like this for 10 more years. A lot of things happen in between then. My sister is also one of us. By the grace of God, she's a year and a half sober now. But we were running and gunning together, apart, doesn't matter. And then I come to this interesting point. I'm one more geographic. I lived, try to play basketball in Boston. I tried a bit, walk on to IU, didn't even get to the school. I lived in Indiana for 6 years. And I'm always moving and running, I'm coming back home, because I burnt all the bridges once again. I just kind of got really good at Hernan Cortezing my life and just burning the ships and leaving, and that's kind of what I did. And so I get to this point. I'm in Maricopa County. I'm in Chandler. I think I'm doing really well. I conned my old man into renting this house in Chandler, and I had turned it into a trap house for growing outside issues. And I'm trying to stay singleness of purpose here. And I'm think I'm an enterprising businessman. I'm finally reaching my potential. And when I talk to my old man on the phone, I'm talking about business with him. He doesn't know about what, but he really enjoys the fact, oh, Jack's going into business for himself. Yeah, sales are good. They're great. It's going wonderful. And I'm I have this house, and you guys, I can't pay the electric bill. I'm scared out of my mind when this thing comes into the mail. Now, mind you, I'm walking around with a 9mm and a couple of knives, so I look like a really bad dude, I got my leather vest on and, throw some magazines on the inside of it in case I get stabbed, because that was a reality of my behavior. And I'm an enterprising businessman, and I hate everyone, especially the man in the mirror. I cannot stand that dude. I hate who I've become. I hate the results of my life. I hate my best friend. The woman I'm with, can't stand her. She is the exact opposite human being of who I'd ever want to spend my time with. I'm getting calls from people in my family, and they're saying, hey, we love you, Jack, but you just can't come to our house anymore. And that's really tough, hearing from your hero grandfather who worked 3 jobs to provide for his 3 kids and pretty much raised you. That's really difficult to hear. So people are exiting me out of my life, and I'm the victim of it, right? Now I see, rightly so. In fact, Dad, you should have stopped giving me money sooner. Seriously, I tell them all the time. I'm like, if you had done maybe 6 months, I'd have 8 years of sobriety by now. And I just come to this point where I'm like miserable, and I had 2 choices. I could either go and ask for help, which I had in a way of like, I just want to leave here before, right? I'd gone to the boot camp in Loa, Utah, where you put on an 80-pound backpack and run around and try and get sober for 5 miles a day, The little counselor guide lady has armpit hair and believes in snake worship. I'd done that program. I'd gone to a ton of therapists. I got really good at manipulating therapists and telling them what they want to hear so they'd report well to my parents, all those good things. But I got to this point where like, hey, I'm either going to ask for help and really mean it, or I'm going to take it out on somebody else. And I decided to take it out on someone else. And my sister was visiting, and we went to a bar on Baseline. It is called Baseline Pub. And, this kid was just trying to get home with his girlfriend. And my buddy who I was with, who was also more than likely one of us, decided to steal the cab because that'd be funny. This guy and his girlfriend, he was protecting his girlfriend. He was like, no, dude, you're not stealing my cab. I paid for this. And he pushed my buddy, and then I got involved. And I was with two Marine combat vets, one of which was a medic, and was a paramedic. He had retired after 8 years in, and he was a paramedic at the time. And I got into a bar fight with this kid, and by the end of it, he looked at me and he's like, hey, dude, I've seen a lot of stuff, and I don't know if this kid's going to make it. And that's what I decided to do that night, take it out on somebody else. This kid was totally innocent. He's a college kid. He went to ASU. He was back home from an internship in Germany, and he ran into me. right? A disheveled, self-centered, looking to lash out on anybody for my problems that are my fault. And I found him. And a moment happened for me where I just first of all, I ran because I knew the cops were coming. But when the spotlights started showing, there was a moment where I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And before the spotlight locked on me, I'd already been on my knees and interlocked my fingers. Like, this is Sheriff Joe's Maricopa County, so I wasn't messing around. I wasn't trying to get shot. And they took me in. And then they released me Monday on own recognizance. Okay. My charges were aggravated assault with disfigurement. This kid had been permanently maimed by me. And I decided, okay, I'm going to try and do something about my drinking, right? So I stopped drinking. Problem is I'm an alcoholic. I can stop drinking all day long, but I'm still back crap crazy. I still have this obsession of the mind, and if you want to look at anything in my life currently, look at my relationship with nicotine. I still have this problem that centers in my mind. And I think that alcohol is the deal. That's not an issue. So I'm doing other things, non-AA approved substances, because that's not my issue. And then I'm driving with a truck in a truck with an old buddy, and his brother-in-law, I didn't know it at the time, had 14 years sober. And he's like, no, you get out. I'm going to roll with Jack. I didn't know it. He was 12-stepping me. And we're going from California to Phoenix because they had a work conference in Phoenix. And I was also, I also wanted to go to Phoenix because it was probably important that I take the stolen firearm that I had stolen from my roommate back across state lines. That's probably a good idea when you're on probation. So I was doing that, and I'm driving with my knee, fiddling around with outside paraphernalia, and this guy turns to me and he says, "Hey Jack, let me ask you a question." And I said, "Yeah." He's like, "You keep talking about like not drinking anymore, and you're 9 months sober and this or that. I wouldn't really call what you're doing sobriety right now." And I'm like, "Well, to each their own. My problem was booze." He's like, "No, man, you sound a lot like me, and I have a whole different issue. I have the disease of alcoholism, and I'm going to ask you this once, maybe, just maybe you could tell the truth for once in your life." He's like, "What in your life has changed since you stopped drinking?" Now we're asking really hard questions. Like, I'm a good test taker, guys. I got decent grades and passed a few exams, and I did not answer that question. God answered that question for me. Because my answer would have been, "Oh, well, this is over here good. Look at this shiny little thing. This is awesome." But the answer that came out of my mouth was, "My life is hell, and I hate myself. Nothing's changed." And he's like, "Hey, bro, I want you, after this conference, I want you to try and not do any of these other things, and definitely don't drink, and come to an AA meeting at my sponsor's house." So I go to this AA meeting, and I walk through the door, and then there's this kind of old, I want to give him more credit than that, this middle-aged gentleman standing at the doorway. He knew I was coming. They told him about me. And he goes up to me, and he knew about my court case. He knew everything. Like someone else had been doing my inventory during the last 10 years of my drinking, and had just dumped it on this man, and this man is sitting at the doorway. And I walk in, and I'm in this hat. I have this like blue little Hurley hat, like the bright Technicolor Dreams stuff that they printed out. It's a neon blue hat. And I walk through the door, and then there's this man standing there, and he's like, "Hey, you're Jack. This is my house. Put your damn hands in your pocket. You're not allowed to take your hands out of your pockets. You're the secretary, and from now on, your name is Blueberry." That was my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he knew that it was a men's meeting. And the one thing he knew about me was if someone, especially a man, if I have a problem with what they say or that I disagree with that, I don't speak words, I start throwing stuff. So he told me to put my hands in my pockets. I was not allowed to get a drink or food, and they had this nice spread out there. I wasn't allowed to do any of that. I had to keep my hands in my pockets. And this old guy, middle-aged guy, was following me around the room, ensuring that I kept my hands in my pockets. I was only allowed to pull my hands out of my pockets to hold the binder that read the 12 steps. And that was my introduction into AA. I didn't hear anything. I was not of sound mind and body to hear anything my first meeting. All I remember is that man was willing to tell the truth about me. And that is nothing short of what I have found in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I am surrounded by people in my life today that tell me the truth about me. So I really don't have this wiggle room that I used to. That 10% of lying is now removed from me because I go to people and I let them in, let them know who I am today. I did the steps. I got it. That man in the truck became my sponsor. And, 2 years later, I'm going to maybe one meeting a month. I have checked the box of the steps one time. So I'm a good AA'er. And I'm crazy. And I'm driving my truck to work, a job I had made up for myself, and was somehow getting paid for it. It probably was a really bad idea to have me helping make sure that Vernon's water supply was clean. That probably wasn't a good idea. That was the job I made up for myself was a service tech. And I'm driving my truck and I'm picking a telephone pole to run it into. And I haven't had a drink in 2 years. And in LA they have these really thick telephone poles, right? And I'm driving a plastic Toyota, and I know that if I at least get it on the quarter driver's side, it'll run through the engine block and smash me. And I'm getting it up to 65 miles an hour, and I'm dry. I'm dry as the Sahara Desert right now. I have no spiritual ground with which to walk on. My spiritual fitness is that of a morbidly obese human being. No God in my life. And I'm thinking about committing suicide, right? And here I am, a hypocrite, because I'm walking around shaming other people for giving me a tough time about my mom who committed suicide. Like, what? And I pulled over and I look at my phone, and my sponsor had relapsed after 14 years of sobriety. And the only thing I had heard up to that point in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous was 12-step that dude. Right? I was going to some young people's meetings, and that was like a saying, 12-step that dude. Right? And so I drive down to North County, San Diego, and I'm going to read the big book. That's all I know. Read the big book to Steve. That's all. Go do that. And I don't know what's wrong. The program of Alcoholics Anonymous isn't working for me because I'm not in the program. I'm around the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not using the steps as principles with which to daily live my life. And I go down to North County, San Diego, and I find this man. He looks like a chopped up biker dude, but he's in Tommy Bahama wear. I really don't understand it. Like, this guy has gnarly tattoos and mutton chops and stuff, and he's bald, but this guy's in flip flops and a flowy t-shirt. And he's sitting down a couple chairs away from me, and he's just eyes closed. One of those dudes. You've seen them in the rooms. You've seen those gals in the rooms. You know they are at peace. You know they have been given the gift of serenity. And you don't need to identify as an alcoholic to know that. It's you're all right. And I saw this guy, and I go up to him after the meeting, and I'm like, hey, man, I'm in trouble. I'm thinking about ending it, and I have 2 years sober. Will you be my sponsor? We'll see, kid. What? Are you kidding me, man? I am here. I like just turned around in Laverne, California to come down here, 12-step my ex-sponsor real quick, read them like I don't even know what I read them, and then I come to a meeting, I'm looking for help, and you said, let's see? He's like, well, are you willing to do whatever it takes to stay sober? Yeah, man, I just drove all the way here asking your random to sponsor me, and you're saying there's like some sort of requirement. He's like, only willingness. Why don't you call me every day, read the first 164 pages, and then walk in with your 4-step. And I didn't understand that. But again, someone had given my inventory to somebody else, some other old dude. And my first sponsor knew I needed a new sponsor because he had relapsed. And so I start working with Bruce. And Bruce, I love that man. But he ends up, as he would say, giving me the big book as a suppository. And, the one thing that he always drew back to, and which I saved my life, was practicing the 3rd step in my everyday affairs. Have I made the decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God in the moment I'm in? Period. When I'm in pain, the answer is no. When I feel okay, the answer is yes. Right? And I don't like being removed from drugs and alcohol at this point because of the grace of my God. That has been gone. I don't think about that. I can walk down the liquor aisle and I'm okay. I don't think about how good that will taste or how that sweats. There are moments when that thought comes, and that's all right. I'm an alcoholic. God is going to protect me from that drink. But like I don't obsess over it like I used to. Like I was going to shoot you to take your bottle. Like that kind of obsession. And that doesn't happen for me today. Thank God, man. I obsess over plenty of stuff, but it ain't that. And then like I'm in this moment and I get to surrender my will and my life over to something that's already saved my life. Like that's a done deal, man. All my thinking has landed me here anyways. All of my cool tricks and ideas have landed me here anyways. As my old sponsor used to say, hopping into the ring with Mike Tyson thinking I could win one more time has yielded me the same result, a perfect knockout. And I'm sitting there wondering where I have gone. What am I doing? And so I'm like, everything comes back to the 3rd step. Have I made that decision? And all the other steps, I'm reinforcing that decision every day. When I take my inventory, I'm reinforcing the decision that the inventory process is not something I came up with. I don't know if you've done a 4-step for the very first time. It wasn't an enjoyable process for me to write all those things down. I did not like it. I was not a fan. It wasn't until I did my 5th step that I actually felt free, right? Here's my disease out in the open. Here's who Jack is out in the open. Now we're cooking with grease, Now we're able to see what the actual problem is, what my character defects are. I'm a liar. I think I already explained that. I'm extremely self-centered and worry about what you think of me. That's why I'm wearing a 3-piece suit, for crying out loud. I'm just being honest. I have all these things in my head that seem like brilliant plans, and they end in disaster. And so I'm going through these steps again, and I'm learning how to apply them in my everyday life. The gifts of that, let alone the material things. I want to set that aside, because do I have material security today? Yeah, sure. I mean, she wouldn't marry me if I didn't. I don't look over my shoulder anymore. I don't have to carry a weapon. I'm not afraid of you attacking me. I'm not afraid of you screwing me over, because if you do, you're sick. How can I help? I can deal with sick people and love them. I crack a small smile when I look at the man in the mirror. That's a big one. That's a big one. People want me around. It's another big one. And I'll wrap it up here. I cannot explain the gifts that working these steps to the best of a knucklehead's ability like myself have done in my life. We moved here in May. My wife and I got married during COVID. We moved from California to here. I changed jobs, and we had a baby. And my father-in-law told me, out of the 7 major stressors of life, you got 4 of them cooking right now, homie. Not only have I been able to stay sober through some really horrendous stuff, including serving a jail sentence in sobriety, but I've also been able to stay sober through the good things, which is really hard for a guy like me to do when good things happen to me and I think I don't deserve them. So I've been able to stay sober through all those changes and be stoked about it. That's different. See, I can be sober and miserable. That's easy. Any of you guys who might be dry here, come talk to me after the meeting. But I get to have a certain peace and serenity that I could never achieve or get or obtain through you guys. Definitely not myself. But as a result of making that decision to turn my will and my life over the care of God on a daily basis. And because I make that decision, do I get to sponsor? Yes, I do. Do they listen to me? Most of the time, not. But guess what? I get to be sober. Do I get to make my amends and make things right when I screw up with anybody, with my wife? Shoot, I made amends to my infant son because I have a short temper and I'm impatient. I'm still working on that. I get to live a different life and my behavior changes and all of a sudden you knuckleheads are asking me to speak here. That's pretty cool. You're talking about a dude who is a page 2 dude, a has-been, never reached his potential, and was certainly heading for death or prison for the rest of his life. And I get to be here. I'm an employable human being who's self-supporting through his own contributions. I have a loving and wonderful family. I mean, that gal is a miracle. I don't have enough time to talk about her. All these things in my life just because I made a decision. So if you're struggling with that decision, I get it. It took me 2 years to make that decision. But guess what? There's always a restart button to your sobriety in 24-hour periods, 1 day at a time, or 1 hour at a time, or in my case, sometimes 15 minutes at a time. And if you ever want to restart your sobriety, it's real easy. You can hit your knees or you can do a yoga pose. It doesn't matter. But you can make that decision right now, and you can obtain the same peace and serenity that some of these people who you visibly see it in. And that's what I want. That's why I'm going to keep coming back. That's why I'll speak in front of a microphone in a 3-piece suit when I don't want to. I'll keep doing this thing for the rest of my life because of the internal gifts that I have been given. And that's all I got. Thanks.